Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Clay, and I am the Bucks Believer. Tonight, I'm starting a new series on my channel that I will be doing throughout this offseason, where I recap the past season for each and every member of the Bucks organization. Each of these videos is going to consist of two parts, a season recap and a preview of what's next for each player. Donte DiVincenzo is the only member of the Bucks whose season is officially over, so he was the logical place to start into this series. Unfortunately, Donte suffered a tendon injury in his foot during Game 3 of Milwaukee's first-round series against the Miami Heat, and he hasn't played since and will miss the rest of the playoffs. With that being said, let's jump into this video and talk about this past season for Donte DiVincenzo. Let's start by talking about a few of DiVincenzo's strengths. This was a very up and down season for Donte, but when he was playing well, we saw him shine in a lot of very key areas for the Bucks. The first of these, and probably the most important for Donte's development moving forward, was his improvement as a three-point shooter. Donte shot a career-high 37.9% from beyond the arc this season, and he looked really comfortable as a catch-and-shoot guy in half-court situations. DiVincenzo also shot upwards of 40% in 3 of the 6 months during which NBA basketball was played this year, so he shows even more room for improvement as a shooter and could potentially get up to that 40% mark at some point in the near future. In addition to his improvement as a shooter, DiVincenzo also got even better as a rebounder, posting a really high 11% rebound rate. That's among the best among shooting guards in the entire NBA, and Donte had 7 games with 10 or more rebounds, so he shows a great proclivity to grabbing those boards at a very high level. He especially shined on the offensive glass, which is not an area where the Bucks have put too much points of emphasis in the past. However, this season that turned around as Milwaukee jumped from the 29th best team in offensive rebound rate last year to the 13th best team in that same metric this year, and a big reason for that was DiVincenzo's improvement on the offensive glass, so a really solid year for DiVincenzo as a rebounder. He also was quite active on the defensive end of the court as he ranked 21st in deflections per game at 2.3. This was really nice for DiVincenzo, and it shows just how good he is as an off-the-ball defender as he's constantly engaged and does an excellent job of making reads into what the opponent is going to try to do. He's also very good as an on-the-ball defender, posting a 1.9% steal rate, which is very close to the 2% rate that's usually regarded as an elite perimeter defensive player. So Donte had a really nice season in a lot of key areas, and the highlight of the season for him this year came during a February 25th win over the Pelicans. In this game, DiVincenzo showed out, scoring 24 points, grabbing 7 rebounds, and dishing out 9 assists while shooting 9 for 16 from the field and 4 for 7 from beyond the three-point line. He capped off this terrific night by taking a game-sealing charge on Brandon Ingram with just about 10 seconds remaining. This iced off the win for the Bucks and was the exclamation point on what was a terrific game for DiVincenzo. Throughout the season, there were some real bright spots for Donte, but he also struggled in some areas that he's going to have to improve upon in order to really enhance his value as a player. The first of these areas is finishing at the basket. DiVincenzo had a lot of trouble converting easy layups for Milwaukee this season, and that is proven in the numbers. DiVincenzo shot just 57.4% within 3 feet of the basket this year. To put into perspective just how poor that is, Tony Snell shot 57% on three-pointers this year to lead the league. When you're converting layups at the same rate that an opponent is converting three-point shots, it probably shows that you need to improve in your finishing abilities, and that's certainly true for DiVincenzo. His lack of finishing ability hurt him both in the half court, where he was not a reliable pick-and-roll weapon because of his inability to convert at the basket, and in transition, where he would constantly blow easy bunnies that should have resulted in 2 easy points for the Bucks. DiVincenzo certainly needs to improve his finishing, but he also needs to iron out his consistency on his jump shot. This year, DiVincenzo had 3-point shooting games of 0 for 5 twice, 1 for 8 once, and 1 for 7 twice. This shows just how inconsistent he can be, as I pointed out before, he had multiple entire months where he shot upwards of 40%. If DiVincenzo were genuinely that good of a shooter, he would be able to knock these terrible shooting nights out of his game completely. completely, but instead he still has nights where he falls into a slump and consistently struggles to hit shots. DiVincenzo had 2 entire months this season where he shot less than 33% from beyond the arc. If he were genuinely a 40% plus shooter, he wouldn't have entire months where he made just 1/3 of his threes. So the consistency on the jumper definitely has to improve. Otherwise, I have a hard time buying DiVincenzo as a genuine plus jump shooter. Donte also needs to improve his decision making. There were 7 games this season where Donte had 4 or more turnovers, and in general, he really struggles in transition to make the right choice. He ends up throwing the ball away a lot of the time, or he ends up taking a contested layup, and as I touched on before, he's not exactly a good finisher when the layups are easy. So when it's a contested shot in transition, he would probably be better off pulling it out and starting off the offense instead. Donte also struggles with his decision-making on defense as he gambles far too much. That comes in when he's chasing after passes and trying to get deflections. The deflections are definitely a good thing, but sometimes he tries to do too much and it allows him to be beat quite easily in some costly situations. One that stood out to me this season was the March 17th game against the Philadelphia 76ers. With just 5 seconds remaining in the game, DiVincenzo gambled on an inbound pass going for the steal, and this allowed a wide open three-pointer for Furkan Korkmaz. Korkmaz knocked that down, tying the game and forcing overtime. Fortunately, the Bucks were able to hang in and take away a victory in that extra period, but if not for DiVincenzo's costly mistake, they probably wouldn't have needed overtime to begin with. The Bucks had high expectations for Donte DiVincenzo in his first season as a full-time starter. He met most of those expectations, but he still has a ways to go before he becomes an above-average starter at the 2-guard position. Even with that being said, this was overall a very positive season for DiVincenzo as he got better in a lot of key areas of his game. For that reason, I'm going to give DiVincenzo a B- for this season. Now that we've talked about what happened this past season for DiVincenzo, the next question to address is what happens next for Donte. The young 2-guard has 1 year and roughly $4.7 million remaining on his rookie contract. This means that DiVincenzo will be a restricted free agent at the conclusion of next season. This puts the Bucks in quite the predicament. Number one, they are able to offer DiVincenzo an extension prior to the onset of next year. I think that it's unlikely to happen because the two parties will probably be on very different sides of how they value Donte's contract status moving forward. I think that the Bucks will be willing to give him somewhere in the range of 3 years, $36 million to 4 years, $45 million, while Donte's party will likely prefer something that's closer to 3 years, $50 million, or even 4 years at $64 million. So if the two sides can come to an agreement in a middle ground, I think that that would be very wise, especially for the Bucks moving forward, preventing DiVincenzo from having another year to build up his value. But I think that in the end, it's not likely to happen, especially when you consider that Donte's party will likely view his value as the lowest it could possibly be after he missed out on the postseason with his foot injury. Instead, I think that the Bucks head into next season with DiVincenzo on an expiring contract. This could lead to Milwaukee potentially wanting to move on from Donte. There are a few different ways that they could do this. The first of these would be coupling Donte with Brook Lopez, sending out a mid-scale contract along with Donte's value as a young player, where Milwaukee could potentially bring in an upgrade either at a big man position or another player on the perimeter. I think that's probably pretty unlikely because the Bucks would be swapping out 2 starters for 1 starter, so in the end, I think they probably hang on to DiVincenzo and Lopez. They also could try trading Donte for a first-round draft pick, but this is a team that's trying to win now. I don't think that that's a good route that they should take. They could also couple Donte DiVincenzo's contract with Pat Connaughton's contract, which would get them around $10 million, but it's hard to find a real upgrade on Donte in the $10 million range, so in the end, if the Bucks can't agree on an extension, I still think that Donte probably spends next year on Milwaukee's team. This puts a lot of pressure on the Bucks to re-sign him as a restricted free agent after the year, as if they don't, he will be walking for nothing. I don't know if the Bucks will let him do that, but when you consider their financials, there's certainly a chance. After next year, we'll be heading into the 2022-23 season. The Bucks already have $98.5 million on their books for that year, with only Giannis Antetokounmpo, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday, Brook Lopez, and Pat Connaughton under contract. If they ink Donte into an extension, it will likely eat into their remaining money under the luxury tax, putting them in a position where they will almost certainly be stuck paying the tax. It remains to be seen whether or not the ownership of this group is going to want to pay the tax each and every year. If they are, I think a DiVincenzo extension probably happens either this offseason or following the next year. But if they're not comfortable with that, we could see DiVincenzo walk very soon. Thank you all for watching to this point. Donte is a personal favorite of mine because of his hustle and defensive acumen, so it was a lot of fun for me to start off this series by talking about him, and I look forward to discussing the rest of the Bucks in the very near future. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video, and let me know in the comment section down below what your thoughts are on Donte DiVincenzo. I think that I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, so that's going to be it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you all again very soon.